CEO of Inventor Robotics. I'm sure you guys can hear me well. Okay. I'll get started on the path that I have taken. So I've taken a fairly conventional path in the first part of my career. And then in the second part of my career, it became a bit more unconventional. So I started my life in small villages in Tamil Nadu, and grew up over there. And then my father was in a traveling job. So I've studied in over 7 schools during that time. And after I finished my bachelor's in 2004, so I was looking for top institutes. And being from a lower middle class family, so I could not even afford a air ticket. And primarily, I wanted to get into only those programs that can provide me funding from day one. So I got one such program at University of Maryland right after my college in 2004. I got in there with fully funded program for my MS in computer science. And then during that time, I also interned at a top startup in Washington, D.C. And then right at the end of the program, I got a campus placement with the largest technology company at that time, Microsoft. And within Microsoft, I went into Windows, which was the crown jewel of Microsoft at that time. So until that time, my life was in a fairly conventional way, do engineering, go to the US, and then go after a top tech company. So far so good. But my primary inclination was to go into entrepreneurship. So the reason why I did all that thing is because with a middle class or lower middle class forces that make you prove your first step. But then right after I got into Microsoft, I was looking onto how can I become a better entrepreneur. So from Windows, I got shifted into a thing called Startup Factory within Microsoft, which was picked up, which was created to promote internal entrepreneurship. And I was there for about 1.5 years in that team. So that gave me initial training ground for running a startup. So in 2010, I started our first edtech company in Jan 2010. So the goal was to bring world's educators in a single platform and then give video-based education to them. But then the problem was in January 2010, convincing Indian investors and even Indian parents that online education is a legit thing was a hard thing. So especially with the internet speeds was barely there, but 3G was just now getting at that point. So the speeds were poor. The cost of bandwidth was extremely high. So during that time, it was quite a hard sell to do this thing, the online education with video-based online education with the courses, transcripts, and so on. So after about a year doing this thing, my partner and I, we decided to pivot and then start a fintech company. So our first passion was in education. The second passion was in fintech. So we thought we will be doing this thing revolutionizing finance. But unfortunately, in early 2011, fintech was also a very new thing. Again, investors had a lot of skepticism in that industry. So this we were running it in Mumbai in India. So we moved back to I moved back to the US in 2012, and I took up a MBA program with Babson College, which is the world's #1 in entrepreneurship. So I was a president scholar there, again on scholarship. So this time I wanted to see how the entrepreneurship is to be done in a proper way. And while I was running this thing, I got into top run accelerators in the Silicon Valley. And I ran a successful company called Limitless, which I eventually sold. And in 2014, I joined a slightly more mature startup. So this was doing quite well at that time in 2014, called Black Duck. And so this gave me a whole new perspective. So I was in a top-notch company like Microsoft. Within there, I was running a company, and then I moved into completely creating a company from scratch, and then learned how to create a company as a part of a MBA program. And then here I could apply many of those lessons and also learn some more. So this startup scaled up quite a lot. And in late 2016, this startup got acquired for a pretty good sum. This startup is based in Boston. So, and at that point, I wanted to get back to India and then restart my startup aspirations. This time, I wanted to get close to my heart, that is in robotics, because my bachelor's and master's was primarily on AI and robotics. And but then from 2006, I was on a different path. And in 2016, I wanted to get back to the original path. So something that there is an inner calling that keeps getting to you. So you guys, as students and as people who aspire to do large things, always keep in mind. So that sometimes you might have to take a slightly different path, but always remember where your destination must be. And a lot of us might not have enough resources to be able to get onto our dreams and goals right at the start. Like for instance, being from a middle class family, I could not take a huge risk right out of college. I had to get into a good master's program. I had to get into a good company at that point because I had like a family to take care of. So a lot of us will have those constraints, and that is perfectly fine. So so you have like enough time in life. So do not like be panicked at 21, 22 that so your peers are doing something like much better. So think of this as a whole thing as a marathon. There's a long way to go. And so the previous 10 years, I've like struggled a lot in running a startup and convincing people that these industries are ready to scale up. So in 2010, I was trying to convince them that edtech was a thing, like video-based education is going to be the future. In 2011, I was trying to convince them that fintech is going to be a key force. But sometimes you are early in the game. And this is something I'm going to cover in the later part of the slide. What do you do when you are a bit early in the game? It can often happen, and during that time there are specific things that we can do to improve our odds. And in 2012, I happened to come across Quora. So primarily my wife, she introduced me to this thing. So she was viewing some of the answers, and she said like, this might suit me. Like I like writing, and so I got onto that in 2012, and then I never looked back. So Quora has been one of my key way to express myself, and I built my company with many of the people I knew on Quora and who came to join me. So in a lot of ways, Quora has become a key part of my life in the last few years. So coming back to the topic, this is one of the best times to be an engineer. A lot of things that are getting changed in the world. So whether it is education or healthcare, retail, logistics, everything is getting changed. And the best time to be an engineer is when things are changing. And COVID is accelerating a lot of this change. So when you are like young 21, 22-year-old person who is looking to build something massive, this is a great time to be thinking some of this thing. So every few decades, such a thing happens. So one of the previous times that this happened was in the 70s, when the oil crisis had opened up a lot of markets, and companies like Microsoft and Apple and Oracle, they all were able to grow in that kind of an environment. So this COVID created crisis can be bad for some of the large players, the incumbents. but you guys are the challengers. So for you guys, this is going to be a much better time, especially if you guys are willing to take that risk and willing to take that uncharted path. Remember, when you are taking an uncharted path, people are going to be naysayers for this thing. So at the start of it, both a brilliant idea and a super stupid idea looks the same. It is very hard to differentiate. But if that is closest to your heart, you can change almost any sector. It doesn't matter what a venture capitalist thinks, what an investor thinks. As long as you think that there is a future, and as long as you are able to find a particular customer for it, that is a quite a valid idea. And if you are able to do such a thing, you can really utilize this time. As I said, this is a great time to be an engineer, great time to be revolutionizing things. Someone like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos and so on. And so the four of the key sectors that is totally transformed are these four. The first is the future of work. How are we going to work? The last 120 years, we have done work in a certain way. So we had to have a large office, and then have great desk and chairs, and then so there has to be a reception and so on. So we created a whole environment, but that environment is not like thousands of years old. This is basically just a century old. And that system is rapidly changing. So when things are rapidly changing, that means there are going to be a whole bunch of new opportunities that are going to be created for people like you. So that the future of work, how people are going to be doing this thing, what kind of collaboration tools they are going to be using. So simple things like Slack is a relatively simple tool to enable you to collaborate, and that is a multi-billion-dollar company. So similarly, you can have like dozens of new tools that could be coming that could enable our collaboration, our communication, our idea sharing, all those things be much better. The second key sector that is changing is healthcare. So healthcare was in a crisis even before the COVID. So the cost of healthcare was exploding since the 1990s globally, as well as in India. And so if any of your family members got sick, you would know how expensive these days it is to get decent healthcare. It has become substantially overpriced. So there is a huge wedge between the rise in wages on one side, and then the rise in the healthcare costs on the other side. It has become substantially more expensive. And that is on one side. And on the other side, there's a huge shortage of healthcare workers, including nurses. So globally, there was a shortage of 6 million nurses. That is before the COVID. And COVID has just worsened a range of problems. So a key issue that is coming on to healthcare is healthcare industry has been pushing automation and the deeper technology adoption out farther than most other industries. Banking and retail and other industries adopted technology far faster than healthcare. So that means since that technology adoption was slower, their costs have been increasing quite a bit. While the cost of your computers and other things that you know of have been coming down, healthcare costs have been going up. So anytime you see something, cost of something substantially going up, you can realize that the adoption of technology in that sector is minimal. So healthcare is going to be something rapidly changing. So there are a few telehealth companies that are coming up and changing some portion of it, but there is a huge amount of things to be changed. I will also talk about some of the experiences that we have in robotics in healthcare segment. The third segment, so retail is the world's largest industry. So selling products to people has been the largest one. Amazon is so holding a chunk of it, but the biggest chunk of it happens in your stores and malls and other places. So that retail is again has been threatened the last few years, and COVID has accelerated the change over there. Again, huge number of new technologies are expected to come in how we shop. The whole experience of shopping is going to be changing. And the final thing is on travel. So as you guys know, travel is completely grounded. But then people will want to travel, and in fact, some people might want to catch up with all the things that they've missed in this year. So in the next 3-4 years, travel is going to be looking substantially different. So just as Airbnb kind of companies came in and then changed how we stay in hotels, there are going to be a whole number of new ideas that could come in the post-COVID world. The way in which people travel in COVID is going to be post-COVID could be quite different, and new ideas are invited. So this is a great time. So you are having multi-trillion-dollar industries. These 4 industries put together, it's over $20 trillion globally. So these 4 industries are substantially changed. You guys are quite lucky to be living at this point. And as engineers, you guys could be looking at thinking of new ideas and new ways in which you can change and you can become the next Bezos and Gates or Jobs. Because they all got onto a time when things were substantially changing, whether Bezos in late 90s or Jobs and Gates in the 70s, they all got into when things are changing. So you guys have one other opportunity like that to be a part of a rapidly changing one. So rather than getting down by negativity and all the things that are going on, this is a time to change it. So a negative, dark time is a great time to be an engineer, because engineers solve problems. And when do you need to solve problems? When there are problems. So few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, engineers had to invent problems, how do I optimize my advertising clicks on Facebook and so on. So they had to create artificial problems because they could not find as many real problems. You guys have real problems, real industries to change, and this is something, a future of the world that you guys can really look at going into. So coming back into what I learned in the last 14-15 years of working for top enterprises as well as into startups. The first portion of it is going to be quite an important one. At least in one segment, you guys have to become an expert. So in the next slide, I'll cover how's the generalist versus specialist thing aligned. But the nature of the problem currently requires specialists to come up in multiple segments. So if you're looking to change healthcare, you need to have a strong understanding of how the healthcare dynamics work, who pays for the thing, who has the money, who doesn't, and then where is the segment that is most most prone to change. So these are things that are very, very important. As a startup, you might be very tempted to thin slice a whole bunch of things, but remember, with all due respect, so Tata's with all their all their 17 publicly traded enterprises together, so they are a 130 billion dollar company. Facebook, which was founded by somebody of my age, this is worth 10 times more than that. So so you don't need to be thin slicing, doing everything from salt to sugar to chemicals. So you can be an expert in one segment, and that is what the modern day thing requires, because you are expected to solve large global problems, including healthcare, travel, retail, and work. That means you guys have to become expert into one thing, and this expertise is going to be extremely valued. So for instance, if you are expert in a Kotlin, or if you're expert in Swift UI, or if you're expert in deep learning, and so on. So it's not just about knowing deep learning, but being an expert in deep learning or any of these major areas that are coming up, you would be sought after significantly more than any of the generalists. So if you have a choice to study 100 hours in one subject, or 10 hours in 10 subjects, pick the 100, because it is also the most hardest. So I always give the example of digging a well. So let's say you are going to dig a well. It is going to be fairly easy to dig the first 3-4 feet because the soil is fairly loose. and you can quickly get onto the first 3-4 feet. Then comes much more harder this thing, and then also like the removing that that sand becomes far more harder. But those that is the point where you are actually starting to do work. So if you are like given up in the after the 4 feet a deep pool, you can create thousands of these pools, and you are not going to get water ever. But the deeper you guys are going to go, that is what is going to increase your odds of success. And the deeper you go, it is also going to be much more harder. Just as you guys have to figure out a way to move all the soil out, um, the same way it is also, as you go deeper, you have to develop tools and internal processes to manage all that knowledge well. It is quite easy to take up a sample program in TensorFlow and import TF and then run something. But it is far more harder to build up your own deep learning solution and building your own data sets, building your own weights and so on. So go deeper rather than having the tendency to go quite broader. This is a tendency I've also seen in many of my interns in the past. I've managed over 70 interns in the past, and I've seen extremely successful interns who have gone on to Carnegie Mellon and Princeton, Cornell kind of institutes. Also seen interns who struggle. One of the key differentiators is how long can you persist with a problem. It is quite easy to give up in a day, but the longer you go, the deeper you go, that is where the key value gets added. Next, something quite related to that is how do you stick on to something long enough? So I have made these mistakes in the past where I would change ideas or directions quite fast. So for instance, in EdTech, within a year of running EdTech, I gave up and then moved on to this thing. So that is what differentiates between an extremely successful person like Byju's and somebody who was not able to succeed in EdTech like me. The key differentiator is that how long are you going to persist? Because the first 2 points are related. The longer you persist, the more deeper you can become, and then you can be shining as a separate light. So sticking on to this thing requires a lot of patience, and also you guys have to be building out the tools, internal processes to be able to stick on. So in the scriptures, there would be the stories of the great rishis who would be doing this the tapasya for years. And only after years the god would come and then give them a boon. So you can think of that in the modern parlance is that it isn't the boons are not given after 10 seconds of meditating. You're going to be given only after showing that you can stick on to something long enough. So this is something going to be very important, whether you are going to be doing your PhD kind of this thing, or you are going to be growing up in a corporate ladder, want to be becoming a top-notch manager or a leader in a company, or you want to start your own company. It doesn't matter. In any of these cases, you guys are going to be sticking on to long enough. There is no sector in the world, whether it is sports or music or cinema or corporate, where you can be rapidly changing and still be successful. So when you are going to be looking at your job or your entrepreneurship path, whatever it is, the first thing that is going to come up, be really careful. So do not get onto this thing called shiny object syndrome. So there is something we call it as a shiny object syndrome in entrepreneurship, where I have a 9-month-old baby. So when I give her a toy, she immediately picks up and so on, keeps it. As soon as I show another toy, it doesn't matter whether the second toy is better than the first one. She immediately drops the first toy and then takes up the second toy. This is something that many of you guys do it in your thing, whether knowingly or unknowingly. You guys look at what your friends have done. Hey, my friend has gone on to this thing. He has done UPSC. This guy has done this thing well. And then so you look at what your friends have done. So you look at their toy, and then regardless of how good your toy is, you just drop that toy and then grab that new toy coming in. something. It's going to be very important. Sticking on to something long enough, sticking on to an idea, sticking on to a direction, sticking on to a passion long enough is what creates the real change. And then the final piece of it, very important, finding the right mentors. So oftentimes, engineers can get into the arrogance, so I know everything, why do I need somebody to guide me, to tell me? But this is extremely important. Identifying the right kind of mentors can substantially change your life. So for years, I had a mentor. I recently passed away, but until that time, he was the one, giving me key guidance on, what should be done, and so on. So I had many such mentors in life, but this is one of the mentors I had for 10 years, guiding on a broader, bigger things. This identifying a mentor is very important. You could be the Arjuna, you could be the world's best archer, but you need the Dronacharya. So really remember this thing. Go with the humility and this thing, and you need a guide. You need a mentor. You need multiple mentors for different walks of life. They need not be perfect, but somebody who can align with you. This is very important. As you guys are quite young, the need for a mentor is much more. But most young people these days, I do not see them seeking a mentor, seeking a guru is extremely important. To do so. Even Steve Jobs and others, they took in proper mentors and coaches and so on to really succeed. I'll recollect one of the key this thing to talk about, like boldness. So one of the best days in my life, I would this thing. So this happened in early February 2003. So I was working on a machine learning project for detecting missiles in the air. So the shapes and forms of the missiles, as well as the speeds, based on the visual data. So this was us working on, and I was presenting at a symposium in Delhi. Like I think the IIT Delhi's Trist was doing that thing there. Then I had a weird idea. I came from a small town, Madurai in Tamil Nadu. So I'm here in Delhi, traveling this far. Why don't I go and meet the President of India? This is crazy. I was an 18-year-old. And so sometimes you have to go with your gut and craziness. So I walked all the way to the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and then and wrote a long piece of paper what I'm working on, why I need to meet the president, having come all the way from the south of India. I passed it on to the PA, initially the watchman over there. Eventually he gave it to the PA to the president. And next day was one of the most amazing surprises I had. So I got a call from the Rashtrapati Bhavan asking whether I would have time to go and meet the president. What else I would be doing, with the that was a key moment. And so I had a 45-minute amazing deep session one-on-one with the president. So when you are young, 18, 19-year-old people, successful people want to see that kind of bold moves from young people. If I go and do that now, probably that would not work. But then as a 18, 19-year-old person, and with a lot of carrying a lot of that passion, so that really worked over there. So similarly, you all of you guys have the advantage of age with you, so really utilize that thing. So do not you don't have to be extremely accomplished in your life to be sing. You just have to show that you have you are the direction, you're going in the direction to get there. So you need to remind the successful people of their young age. So that's the most important thing. So be very bold, be very interesting in taking that thing. That's again one of the key lessons that I've learned, and I've also used in a lot of different areas. So being quite bold and directly reaching out to the top-notch person, that's going to be an extremely important one, especially when you are early in your life. So 2 slides before, I was just talking about depth. So then oftentimes in my previous classes, people ask me, so if I want to be an expert, then like what about being a generalist? I want to learn a lot of things. Yes, so these two can be done together. So in the terminology introduced by a famous company called IDEO, this is called a T-shaped learning. So you can go deeper into one segment. In my case, I've taken the depth I want to be in programming, especially in robotics. So that is my depth. But then I'm also generalist in a lot of other segments. So I'm a generalist in a lot of segments, and in one segment I went deep. So this T-shaped learning is extremely important as you guys think through what you should learn and how you should learn. So you are going to be having the breadth knowledge in a lot of things. So if you're going to divide your week, spend 50% of your time going through the breadth, studying a lot of different things, whether it's psychology, economics, and core engineering subjects, physics, and so on. So being very strong in as a generalist is very, very important, because these ideas can move back and forth. Then being the specialist in one segment, so where you spend the remaining 50% of your time. So this is a thing that has worked well for me, and could work well for many of you guys. So that is the first segment of what I wanted to say. In my experience as an engineer. In this small segment, I wanted to talk about how the future of AI is looking like. Especially, we have an advantage of getting with the world's top organizations. So my startup works with 30 of the world's largest companies in multiple sectors, whether it's healthcare, technology, and so on. So there are customers. And so we get to see robotics and AI from the cutting edge portion of it. And we even got like early access to the tools like GPT-3, and we became the world's first robotics company to integrate GPT-3 with our robots. So some of the key things that are happening in robotics. So these are our robots in various hospitals. So we have robots for disinfection in hospitals. That is the Astra. We have the robots that go around and interact with the patients in their bedside, called the RoboDoc. And then we have the Mitra, which is doing the screening, reception area, and the patient engagement. So these three are some of the areas where we have seen significant use in the past a few months. But in the next few months to 2 years. So from now to until end of 2022, we are expecting to see robots penetrating into some of the largest industries. As I mentioned at the start of the slide, this is the time for changing the world, and robots are going to be a significant way to change the world. And so here are some more for robots in different segments, from banking to hotels to retail. So we operate in one particular segment within all these categories. Now, looking into this thing, so why do I see robotics and AI as a very big change factor? So there is both a pull factor and a push factor that is coming in. So what COVID has done is it has changed substantial industries, and many of these industries that were quite against change, they are all now are open to change in a far better way. This is a great time for new technologies like AI and robotics to get into. For a long time, companies would get onto AI strategy. They would use a chatbot, and or they'll be using some computer vision engine and so on. But then they would not go deeper into the business processes changing. But COVID has made this thing them change many of this core business processes. So that is a first factor that is changing. The second factor that is happening out there is in terms of the global immigration changes and so on. So many of the large economies, they are more open to automation than this thing. So this is both the challenge for many of you guys who are looking to study abroad, but at the same time it is an opportunity to create those industries locally and enable a lot of those things to be outsourced to our segment. So this is an important area that is happening with the restrictions on immigration happening. What is this thing is automation and robotics are getting pushed far more. That is on the demand side. Now on the supply side, people have talked about robotics technology for the last 50-60 years, and it never like went up to the hype. So there were fundamental reasons why that is so. So the quality of natural language processing required to understand what you say was not as good until recently. The ability to move around autonomously using things like LiDAR was very limited. So until recently, a LiDAR used to cost like $80,000, $100,000. So in Indian rupees, close to 50-60 lakh rupees. And now a LiDAR could be had for like 15,000 rupees, a good LiDAR. So that much change from like 50-60 lakhs like 4 or 5 years ago to like 15,000 rupees is a substantial change that is happening on the LiDARs and mobility. And the natural language processing had a substantial change with this GPT-3 model that came out. So we were trying out the previous few weeks. We have been like breaking our head with this thing the previous 10 days or so, and we found amazing level of smartness the machine is able to build. It is still like it won't pass a Turing test or any of those classic AI tests, but in a lot of ways it could be even smarter than the humans. So this again, the introduction of these things mean so on the supply side also there's a lot of things that are getting ready. So there is on demand side, there is countries are getting to a way where robots and AI is far more appreciated and taken in. And on the other side, the supply side, you have like machine learning models, autonomous navigation technologies, and all those things coming to a point where now you can expect a convergence happen and whole new industries can change. This similar such thing happened around 1980 when the microcomputers, the PCs, like enabled whole new industries to be created from this thing. And I have seen a similar thing happen in the mobile phones in 2007 timeframe when the presence of the multi-touch, being able to pinch and zoom, and when having this with this large display screens completely changed the way people had smartphones. I had a smartphone before that thing, and when I used to tell my friends about like smartphones, you can like browse, you can get email and so on, they were not very impressed. But once Apple brought that one thing, you can have this large screen and pinch and zoom, that change. So many industries they require that one change to happen, and when that was paired with the GPS technology that was happening in a parallel world, these two got merged. So now you had a nice display UI where you can pinch and zoom, and then you had the location, like the whole mobile revolution happened. So there are these missing pieces. Once they come into this thing, that the whole puzzle starts looking far more clearer. That is what is close to happening in the field of AI and robotics. There's a convergence that have started to happen. So you're going to see hundreds of robotics companies that are going to emerge. And this is natural in every new industry. So around the 1900, there were thousands of automobile companies. So around 2000, there were thousands of search engines. Similarly, there will be like hundreds or probably even thousands of robotics companies that would come up. Eventually, there will be a consolidation that will happen in the next 4 or 5 years. But by end of this decade, by end of 2030, you could expect robots to be as commonplace as your mobile phones. Like billions of these robots coming in, far more connected intelligence, far more smarter, and the way in which people imagine super intelligence, the singularity. So we are thinking with with a very different notion, very different classes. That in 2030s could be quite different. These robots could be super smart, super intelligent, and so on, but then not in the way of singularity or this old sci-fi movies brought in. So there will be some of this rhyming with the past, but not exactly the same what people had imagined. And so the final 5 minutes I will devote to the biggest regrets in life. The first portion of it is, as I said, giving up on some of the key ideas, including edtech and fintech, where I was quite passionate about. I was quite convinced that at some point people all are going to be like studying online with video-based education, and there are going to be we can utilize the smartness, wisdom of the crowd to democratize education. But then I did not try to go long enough. So that would be my first key regret. The second key regret is in 2005, I was interning at a top startup in Washington DC, and during the internship, the crazy things happened in the startup where most of the people got fired because the startup ran out of funding. So at the end of that summer, I was among the a couple of people who were left because we were interns. That the startup did not need to fire us. But then at the end of the summer, what happened was the startup got a large funding. So now it had lost all its key engineers, and it got huge amount of funding to go to the next step. So I was given a sort of like a blank check, like you can name your salary we are going to give you, because our technology and our other engineers have left already. But I was really unsure. I wanted to finish my master's, and I also wanted to work for a large company. So that with that thing, I refused that amazing offer. So these kind of things would occur once, or probably if you're lucky, twice. So being able to watch for it and take it, I wish if I had taken that thing, my life and career would have been speeded up by 5 to 6 years. So I could have been here where in 2015 or 2014. But that's what happened. So when you are when you're going to be looking at, you guys might be getting through some such amazing new things, new offers or new opportunities that you guys might not have thought of. Like you might have been thinking through one way, and suddenly a different thing comes up. The best and most successful of them would grab that opportunity, knowing how important that opportunity is. So that's a second key regret. Fortunately, few other parts of my life worked decently well. So I didn't those mistakes were not as expensive as they could have been. But still, these two areas, going long enough, and then knowing what is a good opportunity that might come completely from an unexpected direction, but being able to look for it and then is very, very important. So the future of education, I just have 1.5 minutes of this thing. So what COVID has done is a very interesting way to change education itself. So this is something people have been talking about for a long time. So our education system is doing reasonably well given the amount of resources. So if you have to educate 1 billion people nation, what our schools have been doing is fairly rational. This is what China and China has done. This is what other large countries have done. So in the early stages, this is perfectly okay to even have a rote-based education, because that scales up to millions of students. But then now that we are we have come up little bit from this thing, we have to be looking at mentor-centric education. So I have a Quora answer on this thing. So on how this Mahabharata inspired education, where you have these mentors who are created, and these mentors lead students into further of education. This is something I see as a potentially with the large thing, where the teachers or the lecturers would be would be giving the broader direction, and they could be the generalists, and then the mentors could help you become the specialist in each of these areas. So this hybrid factor is going to be an important factor. I don't see anyone implementing this thing. One of you guys could potentially implement this kind of an education, mentor-centered education. So I want to give you guys sufficient time to ask questions. So when we talk about the future, that future that we have been dreaming for a long time, that future is here. This is a future where technology is changing almost everything, and the broader global forces, some of which under our control, some of which are not, which are changing the world in drastically different ways. And change is a good thing for a young person. Change is a good thing for a person who's challenging that status quo. So you guys are in the right time looking at the future. Whether you want to grow up in a corporate career, lead a large company like Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella did, this is a good time. If you want to be like, being an entrepreneur like, Elon Musk or Peter Thiel kind of, this is again a good time. You want to be a public policy expert like, Sridharan kind of a person, again, this is a good time. So many new things are to be created, and you guys are there to be doing this thing. So I'll be open to questions. Thank you. So the first question I'll take in is from Abhishek. How do we get started in robotics? So robotics is an interdisciplinary field. It takes in mechanical, electronics, software, and so on. So the good way to do that is getting back to your basics, the foundation, and being able to build things. This is quite important. So if you are a software engineer, get some background on the hardware side. And if you are in a hardware engineer, revisit some of the hardware areas. Pick up an Arduino. Start you need some jumper wires on Arduino and couple of sensors. Like for 1,500 rupees, you can get all of these things together and start connecting. Get a wheel moving. That's your starting step. But the most important thing is, do not give up the most robotics workshops and so on. Just stop over there. So this is like digging a 4-foot deep pit. It's not of as much use. So go deeper. So once you have done that first thing from an Arduino, you're able to move a wheel. Go deeper into that thing and create more complex applications. If you're a mechanical engineer, go into your kinematics and so on. Look at how can you create this complex designs, complex industrial designs. For a software engineer, think through what kind of smartness you can bring over there. So that's what I would say. Start with an Arduino, but do not stop there. That's the ABCD. So from there, start forming your sentences. So the second question, like from Srishti, how to become an entrepreneur being a BTech CC student. So entrepreneurship does not require a degree or any such particular stream. So people come from all walks of life. So you look at an area that is very close to your heart. It could be education, healthcare. It could be on how do you make vaccines smarter for the future? How do you collect data better? And how do you improve the quality of public health, quality of data collection in this thing, improve the quality of nursing, whatever it is. So something that is close to your heart and somewhat close to your education, bring that thing, and then start a small this thing. While you are a student is the best time, because you can get a couple of your friends with you. Get started on to building something smaller, something simpler. And then once you get from there, then the next steps you can keep building. Do not right from day one think through, okay, how do I create a $1 trillion company? That need not happen. Whether it's Bill Gates or Steve Jobs and so on, they all started in a fairly smaller way. So start small and keep building on top of it. So how can we, so this is from Ishan, how can we use AI and robotics to help our environment? Many of you guys might have watched the movie Wall-E, and similar thing might be required in our thing, because we have screwed up our environment substantially to the point that just using just humans to clean up our environment is going to be super hard. So having smart robots that go into our waterways, that go into our landfills, being able to use computer vision and other areas to smartly categorize the garbage and be able to pull plastics and other non-degradables out of this thing and taking it to a different dump, that could be a good starting point. From that point onwards, having drones that can fight locust infestation and so on. So the sky is the limit when you think of what can robots and drones do for the environment. Huge amount of things you guys can think of, from everything from waste management to be having very clean transportation systems, to having fighting ecological forces like the locust infestation. Next question I'll take from Arijit on what scope do you see in space startup? So space is a very interesting area. A few years ago, I was part of an accelerator. The guy next to me was a mad Russian scientist, and he was working on a space idea. He wanted to create low orbit satellites. The only thing that was a bit more crazy about it is he used to carry liquid nitrogen and all the explosives, and he used to keep right next to my desk. So that was a bit scary to me. So I like liquid nitrogen and all those things, to play around with it and see those nice, beautiful, super cool stream coming out. But then not the explosives that were next to it. On a serious note, space, I've seen many of these companies doing designing nano satellites and or creating these sound rockets. But I don't think it is still going to happen in the next 2-3 years. Probably in the next 6-7 years, we might see a much more explosion in space technology. So for a company like SpaceX, there's a lot of things that could happen. So if you are a company that could provide, that could become a supplier for a company like SpaceX or ISRO, this is a great time, because there's going to be a lot of new investment on space because of the space race that is happening. But as an individual company that is trying to launch rockets or satellites, this is still a bit harder. Again, you could be a bit early in the game. It is not necessarily a bad thing. So this is from Shilpi. How do you find mentor in today's fast moving world? So finding a mentor, yes, it can be a bit challenging. So what you have to be looking at is, so you would be having multiple mentors, and mentors could connect into more such mentors. So back when I was a student, I used to write to a lot of these top organizations. I came across many smart people from institutions like IEE and IEEE. And these some of these very smart people who took a retirement, and the smart engineers, so they became my early guides. I would especially point out to a person named Rajan as part of the Institution of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. So he was giving me a lot of this motivation and this thing during those early times. So become a part of these societies and organizations, depending on where your stream is. Be part of those societies, and then also start volunteering for those societies. And some of you people should also explore this thing called CII has this thing called Young Indians program, and this is open to people from all streams. So become part of a couple of these organizations, volunteer a lot for this thing, for conducting their for conferences, workshops, and so on. As you volunteer, you will come across senior people over there, and go with all humility, and also be able to offer things to them. So they have the smartness and ideas. They don't have time and able to do some of this finer level stuff. These are things that you guys can do, and this will be a good partnership between you two. So become part of these large organizations. That would be, I would say, the first step in getting a mentor. So, according to how did you start your career in robotics? My introduction to neural networks, which is quite related to this field of AI, it happened in my first year of college when Dr. Kalam, just before he became president, he visited our college, and we had to show something quite interesting to him. So we thought neural networks was a very fast moving field. So we created a small project and showed it to him. So that like his reaction was quite good for that. And so that is how I got initiated into neural networks. And then when I got into masters, I also saw very smart robots coming in. I was working with a professor named Tim Motes, was a key leader in robotics field, and with that exposure, I got more deeper into robotics. So there is a question from Nikila on will robots impact employment? So see, the last 200 years, every time new technology came in, people would talk about what about employment. So we have always been destroying jobs and creating new jobs. That's throughout our history. So when we got into agriculture, we put a lot of hunters out of job. Like until that time, people had two things to do, like find food and eat food. That is where. And then what agriculture did was, like, one farmer could make food for 1,000 people. So since the earliest days, we were building automation, we were creating things that made our life substantially simpler, and so on. So robotics is going to be doing some of these things. Some of the jobs are going to be destroyed, but the history of the last 200 to 50 years has been that the new technology has always created more jobs than it destroys. So in this new segment too, I cannot, given the limited time, I cannot go deeper into what all segments where the jobs would be created. But believe me, there is far more jobs that are going to be created from this robotics revolution than that are going to be destroyed from it. This is from Bharat. What domain of robots do you see as the next big thing? I see deliveries as one of the biggest segment for robotics, because these delivery companies, like including Swiggy or Zomato on the consumer side, or on the warehouses internally, there's a lot of need to move a huge amount of things from point A to point B, and this is still quite a manual process. Like companies like Grey Orange are solving the problem, but the problem is substantially bigger, and the robots have, like, just scratched the surface. So this is an area in the next 3-4 years I see huge amount of things happening on the warehouses inside and on the delivery things outside. So getting your pizza or cake delivered by a robot could become quite a reality in the next 2-3 years. So this is an area I see quite a possible one. And question on Shishmit from, what is your opinion on GPT-3? So GPT-3 SSL is one of the most fascinating tools we have come across recently. Like, and so we are playing around in the previous week to 10 days with asking a lot of questions from cricket, history, so on, and we are quite fascinated by the possibilities. It's still a long way to go. It is still, it's not like general AI, which is like all knowing, all pervading, but it's a very good starting point, and much better than anything that is out there in the market. So if you guys are AI practitioners, you guys should be looking at going through the GPT-3 papers, and also looking to sign up for the early access and then play around with it. Just two more questions before this thing can send out. So from Kuldeep, what is the next step in industrial robots? So the previous 30-40 years, company like automobile companies and others, they have automated their main line. So if you go into a like a OEM like Hyundai or Toyota and so on, the main line of that is it is fully automated. So you can see a continuously running assembly line that is moving the car through various stages, and then you add the wheel and you add the windshield and so on at various stages and gets this thing. But then all the lines that are feeding into that main line, they are not quite automated. So in the next few years we expect to see a lot more of the automation happening in the OEM itself, feeding into the main lines. I've seen one such very advanced factory with Daimler. So Daimler was a customer of mine. So they took me to their state-of-the-art factory in Stuttgart, which is making the S-Class Benz. And this was purely automated, where all the different lines were automated, not just the main line. This is I see the future of this thing, but that is one company and in one segment. There's a lot of other industrial sectors where that kind of full automation could happen. It's going to be quite an interesting one on industrial robots there. So I'll take the final question. So there were a couple of questions on drones, the future of drones. So I see drones as a close cousin of robots. So the drones, though, the only unfortunate thing is there's a lot of security challenges to it. So once you let a fairly powered vehicle go above in the skies, this is a really worrisome one for the government, and then for this matter, even robots, autonomous robots moving all around the earth thing, that also has their own security challenges. But then having these small robots, even if they go crazy, you do not do as much damage as what a drone can do. What September 11th did, it can be in smaller ways that could happen. So having this thing on the security challenges, having the surveillance challenges, those are quite a bit on the drones. But once you get access to a government based thing, so I know a friend of mine who's running a very successful drone company. So they work with large government contractors. So they are able to help them do surveys of roadways, railway lines, and so on. So that kind of a thing can work. Or even Idea Forge was helping the government in doing how the social distancing and others are done in Dharavi and other slums. Those are interesting ways to do. So if you are in a drone company, make sure that your interests are aligned with the government and it is contractors. Trying to be a rebel and this thing, that's not going to work out well for drones. So in the interest of time, I would have to end this thing right now. But you guys know where to send more questions to me. So there's always Quora to send me questions. I thank you all for watching this session. I wish you guys all the best as you scale up your career. This is an amazing time to be an engineer. Amazing time you guys can grow your career and life. I expect to see more Elon Musk or Satya Nadella and Sundar Pichai from this batch. Thank you.